Voila. In the meantime, a lot of people are joining. For those who didn't receive my message, please make sure that you have three sheets of paper with you and your favorite pen, because you will need it once Dan has started.
And you'll need it pretty fast, because I'm going to ask you to start drawing at about 2 minutes into this thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
We're going to draw quickly. Hopefully there will be as little bit of sort of Zoom talky as we can possibly do, as little of that and as much drawing as we can do.
Yeah, I will do first introduction in 2 minutes, more or less. Yeah, 2 minutes. And then I give, of course, the floor to Dan.
And Excel, just one more quick tech check.
Yeah.
My screen, you can see it okay, and I look okay and sound okay?
Everything is just fine. If it's not the case for the audience, please let us know. By the way, as you can see, this is a webinar. This means that we can't see you, but of course you have a voice and you can use that voice by writing in the chat. I will take a look at it once in a while. So if you have questions, please share it. Someone thinks you look okay, Dan.
Someone named Dorian. That's nice. Thank you, Dorian. That's very sweet. Well, what I was going to say, Excel, is that even though we can't see all of you out there in Zoom land, we still love you. Yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we love that you showed up.
Absolutely. And
yeah, I'm excited, Excel.
Yeah, okay.
Well, no, you go ahead. I was
going to say, I know a lot of faces because there are a lot of very loyal attendees who come for every session. So that's great.
I'm very excited. I was going to say, Excel, because I have not just a new computer set up, but I got myself a new day-to-day working computer, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. And this is my first big Zoom using the machine. I've done smaller ones. So I'm very excited to see how it goes as well.
That's a lot of challenges to cope with.
Well, but I didn't come to this session first time with everything. I mean, everything's been set up and I've tested it. And like you, I do Zooms a couple of times a week. So I know everything works. But for a big audience webinar, this is going to be kind of fun. So it's a little bit like a test flight.
Yeah. And I have to say,
I wanted to add, Excel, that, and then we also have a Q&A button. So if any of the attendees have a question that they would like to ask you, they can do it there. And then others can upvote the question, so that maybe at the end we can take, the most favorite questions of everybody and then ask them to you.
Yeah, Nancy, thank you. That's a great idea. I will tell you the truth. During the actual session, it's very hard for me to monitor the Q&A. So I'd ask you to to do that. And if something, so a couple of thoughts. If something comes up that's just fantastically interesting, go ahead and just say, Dan, we've got a question right now. But otherwise, if you could help pick which are those that we really want to answer, that would be helpful from me.
Yes, of course.
Okay, that's great.
Oh, look at Philippe is asking, do we really need paper or can we use a digital tablet? Well, Philippe, Excel, do you mind if I answer that one right away?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Philippe, I love Remarkable. I have one as well. But for what we're going to do today, if you can, you don't have to, but paper is great because we're actually going to fold it. We're going to fold it and make a little book, which is very hard to do with your Remarkable. But what you could do on your Remarkable or on an iPad or on a Surface or whatever type of digital device you have, you could simulate that by just making a couple of big squares, pretending that they're paper and just drawing a dotted line for where the folds would be. So I fully understand people who love to draw in their digital tools. I do it too. So we'll be flexible.
Okay. It's wonderful to see all those people all around the world, even someone from the Galapagos Islands. Wow, I didn't even know that a lot of people were living there. I thought it was only for animals. And we have even people from New Zealand. So yes, some people get up at 4 a.m. in the morning then to see you. So I think that's a compliment. So I will shortly start introducing this session, and because I think everyone is really excited, I can see it in the chat. So then I can give the floor to Dan. So good afternoon, good very early morning for some, good evening, late evening for some. First of all, I want to thank you to join again, because yes, we see a lot of names that we have seen before. So some people are really diehards and join every Droidify session, which is great, thanks. And I also see a lot of new names, people who come especially to see Dan, which I completely understand. And for those people, I also want to shortly introduce myself and Droify. So I am Axel. I have been a visual storyteller for more than 10 years. And 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, I founded Droify together, by the way, with Nancy, who is also in the call. We want to free the world from bad presentations and boring bullet points. We want to inspire and empower people to use visuals and even more drawings, because we believe that simple drawings are really powerful in communication. And although I personally believe that everyone can draw, I know that a lot of people don't think like that, and they are not confident enough to draw themselves. And that's why we created Droify. So it's an easy tool where you can create your own illustrations without having to draw yourself, because nice people all around the world share their talents with you, so you can reuse, recompose, and customize the drawings for your use. But of course, a fool with a tool is still a fool. And that's why we organize workshops. Monthly workshops, free workshops, where you can learn different aspects about visual storytelling. And every month we invite an inspiring speaker, someone who is generous enough to share knowledge, tips, and tricks, and to help you to become even a better storyteller. And today we have the absolute honor and pleasure to welcome Dan Rome. And like I said, I know that a lot of you join especially because of him. And I understand it. I met him for the first time, I think 5 years ago in Austin, Texas, at a conference. And from that day, I'm a huge fan. He doesn't know that, but now he knows. I have all his books, of course. And I'm not the only one, because every book he writes is a bestseller. And for me, Dan is one of those people that seems to have so many talents that it becomes a little bit awkward for the rest of the world. He's an amazing painter, he's an author, he's a pilot, and he's a truly inspired storyteller. And I can go on. But above all, he makes visual storytelling extremely easy. And that's why I'm so happy he's here. So, Dan, the floor is yours. Enjoy,
Wow.
everyone.
Excel, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I see the list of people signing in from around the world, and I want to thank all of you for taking some time to share this time with Excel and myself. So Excel, I'm so happy that you started Drawify. I've been following you for a little while, and I'd love to see what you're doing, and to save the world from poor presentations is the right way to go. So what I would like to do with all of you today is talk not only about drawing, but be able to push our drawing a little bit further, so that we're not just talking about drawing, but we're actually talking about how to tell an entire visual story with our simple little drawings. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this right now is I've written a new book. It just came out last month. It's called The Pop-Up Pitch, the 2-hour creative sprint to the most persuasive presentation of your life. And the entire book is built around a 2-hour workshop, during which someone like Excel, you mentioned, who might not draw very much, this person in this 2-hour workshop learns how to draw, and then learns how to use those drawings in order to tell a visual story. I'm just going to talk for just a moment about myself. As you've mentioned, I've written a series of books. The first one was about 12 years ago now. I can't believe it's been so long. It was called The Back of the Napkin, Solving Problems and Selling Ideas with Pictures, which allowed me to really focus on this passion that I've always had of being a visual storyteller. So I came from a background of graphic design originally, many, many decades ago. And then I found myself in management consulting, where I did visual storytelling for technology companies and financial services companies and government and educational organizations. And it's those lessons that allowed me to really pursue my own passion and write these series of books that have, I hope, helped other people become even better at their visual storytelling as well. But one of the most important questions that I'd like to begin with is just why? Why does this even matter? And I think it's partly the following. In a complex and uncertain world, which, let's face it, our world certainly has become these last few years, I find that visual storytelling is very clear, it is very compelling, and most important, it is very, very human. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of us, myself included, are often very worried about what's happening in the world today. It's so complicated, it's so up and down, we just don't know what's going on. And it is up to us, those of us who have the ability to tell a good visual story, to try to clarify, to take that person and say, you know, if we just draw our way through this complexity, what we might find is there's a clearer path all the way through this so that we can see what our destination might really be. And the fact that we're doing it through drawing makes it intensely human. So there's that real connection between people as well. I just wanted to share with you some places in the last couple of months where I've been able to share some of these lessons, because this is just fascinating for me. The breadth of opportunity to be a good visual storyteller is extraordinary. So I've spent some time training with the folks at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is down in Southern California. It's a part of NASA. And what's interesting is Jet Propulsion Lab is the organization that comes up with the concept for, designs, build, launches, and provides mission control for all of the rovers on all of the interplanetary exploration that's supported by NASA and the United States. So the Mars rovers that are on the planet now are were designed and are controlled by the folks at Jet Propulsion Lab. And I've been working with them to use our drawing tools to explain how can you clarify some of the really complex science and thinking that's going on using our pictures. So it's been utterly delightful to work with them. And this is very recent. Someone pointed this out to me. I wanted to just share this. It sounds very self-aggrandizing, and that's not the point. The point is to just talk a little bit more about the breadth of visual storytelling and its impact on the world. There's a guy named Ed Catmull. Some of you may have heard of him or may not, but what's really interesting is Ed was the co-founder of Pixar, along with Steve Jobs and John Lasseter. They were the three founders. Ed Catmull came in with primarily the technical background to actually build all of the systems that enabled the kind of digital animation that has become Pixar's standard. He was the one who invented that. He's won 5 Academy Awards for his films. And someone pointed this out to me the other day. Ed Catmull had read my new book, and here's what he had to say about it. Dan Rome's Art of Visual Thinking and Presentation is a wonderful creative tool and is well worth mastering. So I want to share this. In between NASA and Pixar, people who believe in the power of visual storytelling are very big and very broad, and I want to share that with you. So Axel, thank you again for inviting me. Over the time that we have, over the next 50 minutes or so, we're going to spin together a couple of stories, a couple of words, visual plus storytelling. And so part 1 is where we're really going to focus on just using pictures to help you clarify your thinking and your story. And then in part 2, we're going to very quickly have you actually create a story of your own using a couple of pictures. And then if we have time, and we'll see how this goes, Excel, we're going to ask for maybe 1 or 2 people to share. And if not, we'd certainly love you to share the pictures that you've drawn with other people around you in your family, in your business, in any organization. So as Excel has mentioned, today you're going to need 3 sheets of paper, and you're going to need your pen. And of course, we had some questions earlier. Is a digital device fine? Yes, an iPad or Remarkable, of course, but keep in mind, the first thing we're going to do with our paper is fold it. So it'd be lovely if you had a sheet of paper as well, just for the sort of the tactile feeling of actually physically manipulating your sheet of paper as well. So 3 sheets of paper, a pen, or a digital device. And here's our first drawing right now. Enough of this talk. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to draw on my screen right here, and I'd like you to draw on your paper or on your digital device. On the blank page, put a dot right at the top center of your piece of paper. And then from that dot, what I want you to do is make a big circle. And you're going to draw 1 circle, but you're not going to draw it once. You're going to keep going. And what you're going to find is that even if your circle started out a little bit rough and not very beautiful, as you keep going, your circle is going to start to round itself out and become quite lovely. And you're also going to notice that you can listen to me at the same time that you're drawing. Isn't that interesting? Our visual engine and our auditory engine are operating separately, and that's fine. And this is our warm-up drawing, so you can go ahead and stop now. But now what I'd like you to do is put your pen back at the top center of your circle and draw the other direction. So if you were going clockwise, I'd like you to now go counterclockwise. And you're going to find that one way of drawing feels more comfortable than the other. And so as our warm-up, we've drawn a beautiful circle. So you can stop drawing now. But what I also want you to understand is that circle is also a highly detailed schematic diagram of your brain. Of the 100 billion neurons that you have in your brain, let's say that circle represents the entire capacity of your brain. That circle is your whole brain. Do you want to know what percent of your entire brain is there to help you process vision? Here's what I'd like you to do. Take that drawing, that circle, and cut it in half. and fill in half. This is true. It's estimated now by the cognitive scientists and neurobiologists, behavioral scientists, that probably 1/2 of our entire brain is there to help us process vision. And this is true for the vast majority of people on the planet. About 97% of people, for more than half our brain is dedicated to processing vision. So for anybody who'd like to be a clearer thinker, I have a magic trick that we want to share with you. And that magic trick already exists in your brain, and we know it. We call that magic trick vision. And what I mean by vision is literally the neurochemical, biological, physical, cognitive process of light shining off objects in front of us, coming in through our eyes, and then being processed in our brain. And what we can do by just understanding something around that process is incredible. Because so much of our brain is dedicated to vision, we could pretty much make the argument that for the vast majority of people, we are essentially walking, talking, vision processing machines. More of our brain is dedicated to processing vision than any other thing that we do. Why don't we all take more advantage of that? Just think about it. From the time when you wake up in the morning, you open your eyes and you see what the weather is like outside. And without anyone needing to tell you, you make all kinds of decisions about what clothes you're going to wear, or how will you approach the day. And then as you're going through the day, our eyes are constantly being captured by the things that are in front of us, whether it's a butterfly or a plant, or something that we see on a computer screen, or something that we see on a poster, or somebody walking along down the street. And we know this, our power of vision is such that when we see something that is truly new or shocking or truly intriguing, it completely distracts our mind from anything else that we want to do. That's just a testament to the power of vision. And here's the thing that's also interesting, that visual mind of ours never, ever sleeps. We have such an enormous investment of energy into our brain, and so much of our brain is focused on vision that we constantly are looking at the world and hoping for visual meaning to come to us, whether it's explicitly there or not. So here, to excel the point you made about helping the world not do terrible presentations anymore, here's the real trick behind all of that. The reason that most presentations are awful, it's not because the ideas are bad, or it's not because the presenter is a poor speaker. Those don't need to be true at all. It's because if there is nothing visual to look at on the screen, the audience will give you about 2 minutes of attention. And after 2 minutes, if there's nothing interesting to look at, our visual mind will take over and just start making things up. So the lesson for those of us who present is that we want to be constantly drawing. We want to provide drawings that are attractive to the eye, and then we want to be marking them up, because if we can capture and lead with people's eyes, their entire mind will follow. And what I mean by that is, just if you look at my screen right now, I could draw a box and I'd say, I'd like you to look at this box. And you'd say, okay, interesting box. And then I say, nope, what I really want you to look at is this star over here. This is what's really important. And then I might say, no, what's really important is the process I go from the box to the star. And along that process, there's maybe 3 steps. And there's a step A and a step B and a step C. And what we really want to focus on today is this step B. This is the part I really want to talk about today. Do you see what I've done? I started with an almost blank slide. I had some drawing already there, so your mind was already captured. But then by marking it up and saying, look over here, no, look at this word, by showing your eye where I want you to go, I have captivated your entire brain. And this is, I think, one of the big secrets about the power of the tools like Drawify and others that help us become more visual. So what we're going to do today is use the things I've shared with you and help them build a story. So I'm not going to ask you to start drawing your story right away, because I have a little bit more that I want to share with you. But over the next 5 minutes, as I share with you an example and a case study and a little bit of a toolkit, I want you in your mind to be thinking about a story that you will start to tell us starting in 5 or 10 minutes from now. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to think about a story that you'd like to share about yourself, your work, or your life. And here's the trick, as you imagine it will be at the end of this year. So I want you to project forward 11 months from now. And I want you to visualize what you would like your life, your work, or yourself? What might be some amazing thing that will be different between the end of the year and now? And I want you to tell us a story about that. So project forward into a future version of yourself where something really remarkable and awesome and beautiful has happened, and tell us that story. So of course, you're going to be making something up, but what I really want you to do is, with an abundant mindset, I want you to be thinking about where you want to be in 11 months and tell us the story of how you got there. So with that in your mind, make sure it's about something that is important to you and be willing to share it. So for the purposes of today's session, don't make this a story that you don't want to tell anyone. Don't be secret, because we might ask some of you to share. The toolkit that we're going to work on is something that I call the visual decoder. The visual decoder, fancy name for nothing more than a folded sheet of paper. The visual decoder is the first tool that is in my book, The Pop-Up Pitch. And in fact, I created a pop-up version to really explore with people. So the visual decoder is the first tool that we're going to use from the pop-up pitch. The visual decoder is a simple pen and paper exercise that helps us really think through the story that we think we want to tell and get clarity around that story by drawing it out in a very specific sequence of very, very simple pictures. So what this visual decoder is going to do is, it's a tool, and the tool is going to help unleash your creativity in a way even beyond what typically drawing does, from this notion of left brain to right brain, because you're going to be bouncing back and forth between words and pictures. It will help guide your critical thinking and your problem solving, because although I've asked you to tell a story, when we tell a story, often we're thinking about solving a problem, and the visual decoder provides a structure to go through that. And it then provides a structure for you to tell a really great visual story simply by showing someone your visual decoder and showing them the pictures. You might use this visual decoder when you're confused about your own idea and you want to reach clarity. So in about 10 to 12 minutes, you can reach intense clarity around your own story or your own idea. Then, of course, after you've drawn it, you have a remarkable, simple little set of drawings to show someone else so they can see your story. If you need to give a big presentation, having created your visual decoder is an excellent way for you to just unfold it in front of the mirror and walk yourself through your own visual story, therefore practicing your presentation. And when it comes time to a big presentation, you want to show your vision. Hey, everybody, I want us to go over here to the top of this mountain. Your visual decoder gives the step-by-step instructions at a high level of exactly how you're going to do that. So I love it. So rather than talk about the visual decoder, I'm going to show you how I have used a simple folded sheet of paper to explain to myself, and then build a bit of a pitch to explain to other people a new tool that my business offers. So I'm about to share with you two stories that are woven together at the same time. One of them is the story of how to use a visual decoder, and the other one is the story about me talking about this new offering for my business. So on the cover of my visual decoder, let's imagine this, I'm going to talk to you about my new business offering. So this is just an example. I'll share it with you, and then we're going to do the same thing together. On my visual decoder, I wrote a title, and the title is of the business offering that I want to clarify for myself, and then share with someone else. And I called it Online Meeting Magic. That's the name of my product. Radically better remote presentations. And the big why behind this is because with the ascent of COVID now 2 years ago, and all of us becoming locked at home, I used to do and work with people who did presentations live, but now we're doing them on Zoom. And in the first year or so, I noticed that a lot of people were very uncomfortable with how to do that. So I created this tool to guide people. And here's what it is. My first set of drawings are what we call who and what. So who is involved in this tool and what is it about? So who benefits from my tool? Anybody who's an online presenter who might be a little nervous, the audience they have, some of whom are uninterested, some of whom are falling asleep, some of whom are distracted, and some of them are just really upset by being at home. That's who is it for? And what is it? Online Meeting Magic is a toolkit that provides a set of tools to improve everybody's relationship online. So where does this actually work? Let me now take these little drawings and turn them into a map. So imagine that this is you, and you're going to be giving a presentation, and here's your computer. So I've provided a set of tools to help you make a presentation while you're working on it that is likely to be better once you present it. Then there's a second set of tools that while you're presenting that tool, while you're making that presentation to your audience, this second set of tools make sure that these people are really going to understand, are going to stay motivated and stay with you through the entire duration of your presentation and be very engaged. Then I wanted to make another picture. Let's quantify things, because so far what I've done is I've given you perhaps a good example of some very soft skills, qualitative. My product is for these people and this is what it is, and this is what they're trying to achieve. But we know this in the world of business, often we're measured. And someone might say to me, well, Dan, how would I measure the success of your set of tools? So let's make a different kind of a drawing. Let's make a chart now. And on our chart, the horizontal axis will represent time from today into the future, and the vertical axis will represent engagement. So typically what happens with most presentations is that they start and we have people's attention for a while, and then invariably their attention wears off until we say, oh, the meeting's almost done, at which point their attention comes right back up. But here's the problem. Because people are not paying attention, the retention of information drops off and never comes back. And that's kind of been the typical situation with remote presentations for a while. But I thought, what would happen if we started with more attention, and as the meeting went on, we actually increased the amount of attention because of the tools that we're using, the amount of attention, so that by the end of the session, people have actually learned and retained more than we ever would have expected. And that's how I'm going to measure the success. And when will these tools work? Well, before your meeting, one of the tools is a meeting selector to help you figure out what type of presentation are you giving based on which type of meeting are you having. Then another tool is something I call the 10-page story, which helps you build your presentation into just 10 pages so that you can explain anything. And this is what you do before. Then during the session, when you're connected to your audience, you have online markup, which is what I'm showing right now. That's another tool. And then there's another set of tools that says after your presentation, you can maintain this connection by engaging these people during the presentation to feed back to you afterwards their connection. So that's the set of tools before, during, and after. And so the lesson I wanted to share from this entire tool is that if you are a presenter, if you use this online meeting magic set of tools, it is virtually guaranteed to assure that your audience will be far happier with your presentation than they otherwise would have been. So what I've just showed you is my entire business story done on a series of a title, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drawings, and it tells the entire story. It takes 10 minutes to create, and it takes about 3 minutes to play it back. I went a little bit slow because I was also explaining a little bit about how I use the tool. So now you're going to do exactly the same thing. You are going to create now step by step with me. I have timers. We're going to go through it page by page. This is where things get super interactive. I'm assuming that all of you love to draw at least a little bit. Nobody is going to worry today about the quality of your drawings. I'm going to ask you to draw really fast. And just as I did before, smiley faces, stick figures, arrows, boxes, the fastest drawing you can possibly make, the simplest you can is all you need, because the clock is going to be ticking. So here we go. Remember, I asked you a moment ago to think of a story you'd like to share about yourself at the end of the year. So now is the time for you to imagine, what is something about me that I imagine will be even better at the end of this year? My life, my family, my work, my travel, whatever it is. Imagine telling us the story at the end of this year about something amazing that has happened for you. And it's going to be something that is important to you, because by drawing it, it's going to become important to us as well. We've seen it before. Here's your visual decoder. First thing we need to do, if you're on a digital device, please don't do this, but if you're on paper, please follow along. Grab your sheet of paper, letter size, A4 size, depending on where you are around the world, you know what I mean. Grab that sheet of paper and hold it in horizontal landscape mode. And then what I want you to do first thing is fold this paper in half from side to side. So you've created like a little booklet. And then what I want you to do is just loosely crease it in half from top to bottom. So just do a light fold and then open it back up. And now what you're going to notice, you'll see that you have created a beautiful little 4-page book. You have a cover, you have an inside that has 4 exactly even panels, and then you have a back cover. And now you've created the structure of your pop-up pitch. of your visual decoder. So now what I need you to do is grab your pen, and we are now going to label each of these panels. So follow along with me one by one. You can see it on my screen, but it's going to be easier if you follow along on the camera. So on this cover, imagine that you've got a little book. On the cover, right now, all I want you to do is write the word title, quite small. This is where you're going to write the title on this cover, but don't do it yet. Just write the label title. Then open up your visual decoder, and we're going to start here in the upper left-hand quadrant and then move across all four. What I'd like you to do in the upper corner of your left-hand quadrant number 1 is write who and what. Literally write those words, who, what. Now move over to the upper right panel up here, and I'd like you to write the word where. Now move down into this lower left-hand panel, and I'd like you to write the words how many. This is where you're going to get to draw your chart, where you're going to quantify things. And then in this last panel down here on the lower right side, I'd like you to write the word when. Now you'll notice what we've done is we've covered all the big questions. Who and what am I talking about? Where are they now and in the future? How am I going to measure the change? What will have improved? And when is this going to happen? And then on the back cover, what I'd like you to write is just the word, the lesson. And this is where we're going to say, having been through all of my drawings, what is it that I most need to remember? What is the lesson that is most important from everything I've drawn? Okay, so you've now created your visual decoder. All right, everybody, you got a little 4-page book. And what's beautiful about it is now in a very structured way, we're going to go through the action of drawing out our story. So here's what I need you to do. I'm going to give you about a minute. And what I want you to think about is, as you imagine yourself at the end of this year, and this thing in your life has changed for the better, I want you to give that story a title. And don't have to be clever. It could be, by the end of the year, I will have traveled to Tahiti. That's fine. You could say, I now have a successful business. That's even bigger. What awesome. Whatever the thing is you're going to tell us about that is this change in your life that's going to take place in 2020, with words only, I want you to take 1 minute and write a title on the front cover that's going to guide the rest of your storytelling. So take 1 minute and do that. I'll be right here myself. And as you're doing that, I'm going to continue to talk just to give a little bit of a voiceover. If anybody's stuck, there's often a trick here. Many of us find it difficult to talk about ourselves. So if you really can't come up with something that's going to impact you, maybe what you could do is tell us a story about someone else, someone who you know or care about, someone you love, someone who you'd like to help out. If you can't think of a story for yourself, think about a story for someone else, what you would like to see happen in their life by the end of this year. And you could tell us their story as well. Okay, so because the clock is ticking, I'm going to hope that you've come up with the title, the basic directional title for the story that you're going to draw for us. And here's the really good news. It really doesn't matter how clear your title was, because by the time over the next 12 minutes, as you draw all of your 5 pictures, that title is going to become incredibly clear, and you can always come back later and modify it. So here we go. We're going to start with who and what. So what I want you to do in this quadrant right here on the inside of your visual decoder is, in the next 2 minutes, and I have a clock that I'm going to start very quickly, I want you to draw 3 or 4 people or groups who are involved in your story. And don't overthink it. Since the story is about you, one of those people is going to be you. And who else is involved? And if you're telling the story about someone else, you better make sure that they're on there. But who else? Who else might be involved in this story or impacted? Who might even benefit from what's happening? And then I want you to add a thing or two, a suitcase, an airplane, a business idea, a box. So I want in that quadrant to have a few drawings of people and a few things that are going to happen during your story. And I don't want you to do any more than that. Very simple. Don't overthink it. Just people and a couple of icons of things that are involved in the story, with nothing more. The clock is starting right now. You have 2 minutes. Go. Okay, we've got 1 more minute to go. And in this second minute, I'm actually going to provide a little conversation, a little bit of a voiceover. I don't want to distract you from your drawing, but maybe I can help you and guide you. What we're looking for in this panel is basically a set of disconnected stick figures and smiley faces with names on them and labels. And by the way, words are perfectly good. If you need to label something, or if you can't figure out how to draw it, just write the word and put a circle around it. That's perfectly fine. What we're just trying to do is line up who are all of the people that are involved in the story that I'm about to tell you. And one of the ways you might think about that is if you've ever seen a movie or if you've ever been to a play. Very often, before the play begins, they give you a list of the characters. What I'd like you to be thinking about is who are the characters who are going to be involved in the story that I seek to tell you? And it's really good to get them down on paper first, because that then helps us think, well, now I need to do to tell my story is move those characters around and have them do things. So I hope that helps you. And by the way, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time is up. So go ahead and put your pen down. You're done with your who and what for now. So now what we're going to do in this second panel, upper right side, is we're going to think quite differently. We're not going to think about who and what anymore, but now we're going to think about where those people and those things are connected. Where do they actually exist in space in relation to each other? Now we're going to start to draw a map that shows the relationships as they are now between those people that we just drew. So who's connected to who, who's upset with who, who's going where, as it looks right now. So what I want you to do, you're actually going to kind of draw 2 maps here, and you have 2 minutes to do it. It's going to go fast. I want you to illustrate where those people and things overlap and intersect today. So it could be that you'll draw us a little Venn diagram and you'll say that I'm here and my family member's here and my boss is over here and here's where the problem is. Or it could be that you'll draw actually a little map of the world and you'll say that we're here in the Shire and the evil is down here in Mordor, and what we need to do is get down there and then be able to make it home. Or you might draw a little map that says, here's all the pieces and here's where they need to fit together. So in 2 minutes, I want you to draw us a mind map. It could be a map. It could be a geographic map. It could be a mind map. It could be an associative map, but some kind of visualization that shows the relationship and location of those people you already identified today. And then through some arrows you draw on that map, where might they be at the end of the year? So where have they moved as this amazing thing has happened? I hope that makes sense because you got 2 minutes to do it. The clock is starting right now. And again, we're at the 1 minute mark. We're halfway done with your drawing your map. And so I'll just chat a little bit and maybe this can help. Drawing a map is, to me, the most fun of everything. And a lot of people also find it to be the most complicated because there's so many possible maps you could draw. What I want to be clear on is the reason we're drawing a map is we want to take the individual characters that we had identified in that first drawing and begin to bring them to life. And that means that they're moving around. So it could be, just to take an example, if something that I imagine taking place by the end of the year is I'm going to take a big trip with my family, my map might show that all those people who are in my family are widely distributed today. And that at the end of the year, they're all going to be in one place. How would I represent that? I could draw a map of the world and show where they're physically located. I can draw a conceptual map and say that we're scattered all over the place in terms of, say, our different political views or what have you. And what we want to do is come together. So that's what I mean by a map. And by the way, 3, 2, 1, time's up. You see how this goes quickly? It's forcing your visual mind to work really fast. And that's what I find exciting. And we'll talk about why there's only 2 minutes per drawing when we reach the end of this time. I'll give you some of the science behind this. We're now going to move on to drawing number 3. and it's going to feel completely different. Because what you're about to do is take this story that's evolving in your mind, and you're going to shift it in a completely different visual processing center. So far, we've been talking about things that are very much qualitative, generalist. Now we're about to move our story into something quantitative, numeric, measurable, and specific. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is draw a chart. And what you draw a chart, the only way you can draw a chart is if you have something that you can measure. So in your story, I want you to identify what is it that you might be able to measure. Maybe it's a level of happiness. And maybe today my happiness is only this high, but by the end of the year, my happiness is going to be this high. Or maybe it's how many people are going to come on this trip with us. And maybe I could draw a little chart that says over time, initially, there'll only be a couple of people. But as time goes on, we're going to get hundreds of people to join us. So what I'd like you to do is think about drawing a chart, a pie chart, a bar chart, any kind of visual of number, a time series like a stock ticker. Or if you want to, a big circle represents a lot, or a small circle represents something very small. So a visual way to show us numbers that you can measure in your story. How far will I travel? How many people will be there? How much money might it cost? How much money am I going to earn? So draw a chart or two that illustrate how you might quantify or measure the change that's going to take place between now and your story at the end of the year. You have 2 minutes to do it. Anything goes here. Anything you can measure and chart out. As always, with a minute to go, I'm going to provide a little bit of voiceover. Maybe I don't want to distract you from your drawing, but maybe this will help you think about it. In my decades of working in this space in between creativity, drawing, and business, and by the way, I think the two are equally creative, I often find that there's kind of two types of people on the planet. There are people who like to think about things just as they look or as they feel. And then there's people who like to count at things. And we all fit on this spectrum somewhere. But by and large, once we go into the world that we call business, because things need to be measured in order for people to figure out what they should invest in or where they should put their time, we love to measure everything. So there tends to be a dominance of measurement in the business world. And here's something that often happens for us that live more in the drawing world, is we tend not to want to measure as much. These are generalizations. But one of the reasons we're often not taken as seriously as we might be by business people is because we tend not to measure. So this is our opportunity to use our pictures to actually show specific measurements, and that we are being thoughtful about how we will track the change that we recommend. And the business people are going to find a lot of comfort in that and actually believe more in us and our drawings when we make drawings about measurement. So that's what I wanted to share with you with that. Okay, so now we've got one more drawing to go. We've finished our who and what. We drew a map to show where. We just drew a chart to show quantity. And now what we're going to do is spin all of these together into talking about when. So in this lower right-hand panel, in 2 minutes, what I'm going to ask you to do is draw us a timeline, a very simple timeline that shows a sequence of events, A and B and C, or maybe we want to be fancier. Maybe we want to show that this is step 1, and then step 2 is going to be over here, and then step 3 is going to be over here, and it's going to lead us home at the end. Whatever you want to do, but what I want you to do is think about the storyline, the sequence of events that take place between now and the end of the year, the key events that need to happen for you to attain that new status, that new position in life that's happening at the end of the year. So what I want you to do is illustrate a timeline of 4 to 5 steps required to get that change to happen by the end of the year. What is the first thing that needs to happen in order to get you moving in that direction? And then what's the next thing? And then what? And keep going, showing us this timeline of events until you get to that new you or better you at the end of the year. You've got 2 minutes. Go ahead and give us a timeline. Walk us through a visual representation of the story. In this last minute in our almost last drawing, I'll talk just a little bit, share a little bit more insight about timelines. I have done training using the visual decoder probably close to 1,000 times now. Certainly, I've shared this with thousands and thousands of people in every industry you can imagine over many, many years. And consistently, what I find is that people really love drawing this timeline. Universally, we seem to be very good, most all of us, or have a desire to map out a process. What do I need to do to get from here to there? And the beauty of this visual decoder to me is the there, where I'm going, was already drawn in my second drawing. And so now I've had all this other time to think about what might I need to do to make it happen? And of course, plans change all the time. But by having that map in mind of where I want to go, and then having this timeline of my basic plan, I at least have something in place to get started. So with that, we've got one more drawing to go, our last 2 minutes. And this is now, go to the back cover of your visual decoder. We filled out the front with our title. We filled out the inside with our drawings that we just made. And now we're on the back cover. And here's what I want you to do. In the next 2 minutes, you've just spent 10 minutes, 10 detailed minutes thinking through your story of everything that you drew, the people and the places and the numbers and the sequence. What are 1 or 2 of the most important things you really want me to remember, or you want yourself to remember from everything you've just drawn? And I want you to summarize your entire drawing right here. What is the big takeaway? What is the lesson you really want people to remember? You can draw it, or you can write it, or ideally you can do a combination of the two. But this is the lesson. This is the moral of the story. This is what you have achieved in one visual sentence that you want people to remember. So in 2 minutes, create your crowning achievement for your story, and then we'll be able to share. So in this last moment, there's a few things that I want to share. You should be completing this visual takeaway from your story, this kind of visual summary. That by the time that might inform what you titled your story. Now that you've come up with the lesson, you might want to rewrite your title a little bit, go back to the cover now that we have a super clear idea of our story. So that's one thing. The other thing for Excel and Nancy is we're at the point now, if we want to have a few people begin to share, it would be lovely if we wanted to have, I think we have time for maybe one volunteer to share with us their visual decoder if you want to open it up, or if maybe Excel or you or Nancy want to be the one to share. So I just wanted to let you know, technically we're at the point where it would be great if we could have someone volunteer and share, whoever that is. And then the last thing is I see a question here from Anthony who's asking why 2 minutes? And I don't want to distract you from your final lesson, but I can share with you. So I've tested and I've read a lot about behavioral economics, about human behavior, about the amount of time that we're willing to take on any task. And what we've optimized and tested many, many times is that 2 minutes is the exact right amount of time to ask someone to think about each element of their visual story. If you go less time, people are not comfortable with having enough time at all to even begin to get their thinking in place. But if you go longer than 2 minutes, we tend to get distracted. So 2 minutes has proven to be the optimal amount of time to create our first drawing, rethink it a little bit, add more to it, and then move on. So there's just the right amount of time. It's what we call the creative power of constraint. If I give you a very, very tight constraint, this is the amount of time you have. This is the number of pages you have. This is the amount of resources you have. You will come up with more creative solutions than if I say, you have everything available to you, do whatever you want. The creative power of constraint, the 2-minute rule, it's very, very effective, especially for workshops. So thank you, Anthony, for that. So Excel and Nancy, I don't know how structurally you want to do it. I think we have time for maybe one volunteer to literally, I can stop sharing my screen and we're going to come back before this is over because I have more that I want to share, but I wanted to have a chance for one person to have a chance to share their drawing. How do you want to do?
Yeah, there's also 2 questions. So we can't forget that we have to answer them also before the end of the session. But indeed, who wants to volunteer? Because then I will quickly make you a panelist so you can share. Otherwise you can't share. So please raise your hand if you want to be a volunteer.
And if Excel, just in the interest of time, if we want to keep it really simple, I could also say, Excel, show us yours.
Yeah, that's also.
Let's do that. Let's do that because time is so limited and go through volunteers, other people, you're going to have to share it with someone in your family. Excel, you go.
Oh, and which part do you want me to show?
The whole thing. What I want you to do is say, my name is, take your visual decoder and put it in the screen. My name is Excel, and here's the title of my story. And then in 3 minutes total, walk us through what you drew in each panel in order, and then give us the lesson. So it's like you're giving us a little visual storybook. Make sense? Your turn.
I'm sorry because I'm, of course, talking again about Wi-Fi. And in last session I did the same. So I'm sorry for if it becomes annoying. So my title is 15,000 people on Wi-Fi. So it's about the users together. Then the who and what. I don't know if you can't see it, by the way. So the who and what.
We can see quite well, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I've been drawing computers, light bulbs, the world, people who are clearly very happy and empowered. Before it was the where. So the where was all about people coming together. You don't see it well because you have a marker at the back.
It's beautiful. I love it. Look at that.
So all those drawings coming together through the computer to the rest of the world. That's what you see. Then the numbers is 2 axes. One is amount of users. The other one is amount of artists, because the more artists, the more drawings, the more users. So it's really, really going together. And then, of course, it's almost my plan. So what do successful sessions like this one for awareness, successful launches and features, and empowered community. And then I believe I will reach the success I had in mind. And then the lesson is that it's not my success, but it's the success of everyone. Everyone involved in this whole story. So it's not about me. And it was, of course, not about me, but that was my main lesson after this session. So thanks, Dan. It was wonderful to do.
Well, Excel, let's talk about this just for a moment. And I want to make sure we get questions, and I want to make sure I see which questions you have. We have about 6 minutes left to go.
Yeah.
Excel, walk us through a little bit of your thinking. You've thought about Drawify a lot for years.
Yeah, of course.
Did you come up with any new insight or this act of drawing it out in this visual decoder, how did that feel to you? Was that helpful or useful? What did you discover, if anything? Tell us a little bit about the feeling of using that tool.
Yeah, it helped me to, because it's a different way of thinking about things. So it forced me, like the biggest insight I had with the drawing about the where. So where everything was really coming together through the platform, you know, that
No.
it's like people are a little bit everywhere, but they are all at the same place. And that was the biggest insight I had during this exercise. So
You said something interesting right there, Excel. Here, let me kind of take over the screen again, if I may.
Yeah.
Let me share screen one more time. Share screen 2. And here we go. So the page that you're looking at now is, if anybody's interested in these templates, the visual decoder template that we just used, and the more advanced 10-page pitch template, which we haven't really talked about yet, but is the second tool. Those are available for free on my website. So if you simply go to danrome.com, and if you just look at the home page, about halfway down the home page, right here, you'll see this section that we're looking at on the screen. And if you just put in your name and your email and click the download, you'll see that the screen updates so that you then click and can download as a PDF or as a PowerPoint the actual template. So people find those very useful. The reason I bring this up as Excel is to answer the question or the thought that you just shared. We think differently. Here's what I love about this visual decoder. Is it intentionally is designed to force us to think through our idea in 6 different ways. Just come up with a title, then imagine the people, then imagine their location, then imagine the number, then imagine the sequence, then imagine the lesson when they all come together. So what I found useful for it, whether it's people who love to draw or not, the idea is by forcing your brain and in a limited amount of time to answer this specific question about the idea you want to share, it powers you towards one type of drawing that most of us might not normally do. So many of us love to draw icons. Many of us love to draw characters. Many of us love to draw maps. Many of us don't love to draw at all. The visual decoder is a beautiful, simple, elegant little forcing mechanism to obligate our mind to think in all of these directions. And it's kind of, it only takes 12 minutes to fill in. But what I have found in feedback has been that in that 12 minutes, because it is structured and it is specific, more thought comes through than if we were just taking an hour to just sort of brainstorm. So I find that to be a very effective tool in that way. Now, in our last couple of minutes, let's answer whatever questions that are left. What have you got for us?
Okay.
So the first is from Tina, and she asked you whether sketch notes help you to create in other mediums as well.
Absolutely, Tina. What an incredible question. So the idea of visually drawing out a story as I'm reading it or as I'm hearing it helps me all the time. So sketchnoting is something I do all the time. And in fact, these are sketch notes from a call that I had with the client the other day. This, believe it or not, is my very rough sketch notes. I don't know how much you can see of it, of a client, of talking to a friend of mine who's a client as we're going through his idea of how he goes from where he is today to where he wants to be in the future. So these are not traditional sketch notes, but the idea of using pictures to capture the elements of a conversation in real time and capture them so that we can go back and look at them is the way I live my entire life and do all of my business. So Tina, it's an incredible question. The idea of being able to draw live as a way of recording what it is that people are talking about is an incredible gift. So thank you for asking that.
Okay, and then we've got another one from Christina. She's asking you, are there any tips or tricks regarding your way to emphasize and lead through a presentation as you do with your pen?
Oh, Christina, what an incredible question. Yes, there is. Here's the tip. It's exactly what we just saw with our visual decoder. It is the obligation of the presenter, not the audience. It is the obligation of the presenter or you to know on this entire page of everything I want to share, what is the most important part that I really need to share with you, and mark up that. So where you put your emphasis is not on everything. Your emphasis goes on what is the single most important part of this slide or this image that I need you to remember, and emphasize that. And the rest becomes the supporting connection. Does that make sense?
I hope
there's one more question in the chat from Barb. How does a visual template work in groups?
The visual decoder, what an incredible question, Barb. So what we do is when we're working in a group, in a workshop, I ask everybody on their own to make their own independent visual decoder. And then we break up into teams of 3 people, and they present their visual decoder to each other, typically around a common problem or a common opportunity. And then the team of 3 uses the visual decoder as the starting point to create a more refined visual story that combines all 3 of their points of view. So it's a remarkable tool in a workshop to ask someone for only 12 minutes to do it first on their own, present to each other in teams of 3 to 5 people, and then spend the rest of the time that you have live working to come up with the best solution based on what everybody has drawn. It's a really great, I use it in every workshop I've ever done, whether it's live, in person, or remote. And I find it super valuable. One more thing, because I get excited. Think about this. At the end of the day, when people leave the workshop, everybody has on their piece of paper that they can take home their version of the story, and they could take it home and share it with their family or share it with a colleague. And when it's so beautiful, because people say, what did you do in the workshop today? Or what do you do at work all day? Or what did you do when you were in the office? You can then take your little visual decoder and say, let me show you what I did. It's lovely.
Thanks, Dan, for answering that question, because it was also a question from Crystal. If you use it in sessions with clients, but that has been answered then.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, a lot of nice reactions in the chat. Maybe you can take later the time to read them. Also, someone who wanted to share the drawing. So if anyone feels the urge to share your drawing, please do so. Just do it on LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever you want. Just tag Droify and Dan Worm, and then we will see it and we will reshare it if you want with the rest of the world. Any more questions? No, we are also at over the top of the hour. So I want to say thank you to everyone who joined this session. And of course, above all, Dan, to be here with us and to inspire us with this amazing session. And Nancy also to be my lovely assistant. Thank you for that. After this session, I will send you a mail with a recording of this session. It can be tomorrow morning, probably. There will be also a form that you can fill out for the feedback. And if you want to be in the loop of next sessions, please register on Droify, because then you will get the newsletter with all the sessions we organize. So you won't have to miss anything else in the future. So thanks, Dan, again. Thanks everyone who was here in the night, in the morning, in the evening, whatever. I really enjoyed it. And I hope to see you another time.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. That was fun. Thank you, Excel. Thank you, Nancy. And thank all of you joining us around the world. That was fun.
Yeah, for me too. Thanks.
How did that feel to you guys? Good?
Yes, people are still
Excellent.
going out, but yeah, it was
okay.
Yeah, everyone can continue listening. So
of course.
By the way, if someone wants to stay and ask a question, for me it's okay. So no, it felt great. It's wonderful, and if you see the reactions, I would say enjoy.
Very good. Well, listen, Excel, thank you again for inviting me and all of your support. And you know how I can help you with Droify. I'm happy to do what I can do, and I hope our paths cross again very soon.
I hope too. Thanks again, and yeah.
All right, we'll talk soon. Thank you, Nancy.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.